Thank you, Cha. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, depending on from wherever you are joining. Uh, we have a very interesting set of speakers today, and Singapore has been a global as well as a regional trendsetter in AI in health. And today we have them, though we have been hearing about them in reports, but we now will hear from those who are very much involved in setting this up in the first hand. And I would like to introduce the speakers here. First will be Dr. Adjunct Professor Dr. Raymond Chua. He is a public health trained physician and presently the Deputy Director General of Health and Health Regulation at Singapore's Ministry of Health and the Chief Executive Officer at Health Sciences Authority, overseeing the regulations of healthcare services, information, and health products, respectively. He is currently leading a regulatory transformation review to synergize regulatory operations across health services, information, and products. With over 25 years of experience in both public healthcare and private pharma sector, he has driven transformative regulatory initiatives, including the enactment of Human Biomedical Research Act and Healthcare Services Act, which modernized Singapore's healthcare regulatory framework. He pioneered regulatory sandboxes for innovations such as telemedicine, mobile inpatient care at home, and clinical genomic services, and introduced governance measures for emerging technologies like precision medicine and AI. Welcome, Professor Raymond Chua. Next is Ms. Nazia Nasrat. She's an Assistant Director of the Regulatory Policy Division at Singapore's Ministry of Health. She works on the development and implementation of regulatory and governance policies for healthcare with a focus on emerging fields such as precision medicine and artificial intelligence. Prior to her current appointment, Ms. Nasia served at the Ministry of Digital Development and Information, where she was part of National AI Group and Digital Economy Office. She contributed to the government's efforts in transforming the Singapore's economy and society through technologies such as AI, leveraging policies and government resources to deliver AI for public good. Welcome, Ms. Nazia. Our third speaker is Zhuang Guanghe. His current role involves leading digital health branch, which evaluates pre-market device registrations for digital health medical devices, including software as a medical device and artificial intelligence medical devices. Over his 15 years tenure as Health Services Authority, he played a pivotal role in the development of digital health and AIMD regulatory frameworks in Singapore. He also represents HSA in the work group for the cybersecurity labeling scheme for medical devices, a collaborative initiative by the Ministry of Health, Synapse, a cybersecurity agency, and HSA aimed at improving the visibility of medical device security, raising overall cyber hygiene levels and cyberspace. In terms of international collaboration, he contributed to the International Medical Device Regulators Forum, Medical Device Cybersecurity Working Group, which authored the IMDRF guidance, Principles and Practices for Medical Device Cybersecurity. This document provides foundational principles and best practices to support the harmonization of cybersecurity regulations worldwide. We have the three illustrious speakers from Singapore joining us this evening. Once again, I would welcome for this webinar. We are grateful for this opportunity for the Ministry of Health Singapore to join us this evening and enlighten us. Over to you, Professor Chua.
Thank you, Jai, and many thanks for inviting Singapore to showcase our AeHIN to showcase our Singapore's approach to AI and governance. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. In Singapore, I think I just wanted to give a brief opening before I actually ask my experts, Nazia and Guanghe, to actually showcase what we are doing in Singapore. But in Singapore, I think what is very important is we view AI governance not as a barrier to innovation, but as an enabler of trusted innovation. I think a lot of the AI that we are deploying in healthcare right now, centers across either, looking at it from an administrative perspective, trying to see how to help the administrative functions within the healthcare settings. But I think the other bigger issue is when it is deployed either as a into the clinical or clinical operation setting, where it is to see how it can be a complement to help our clinicians in healthcare decision making. Then there has been quite a lot of debates, I think, in terms of what does then AI play a role in healthcare? Is it something that is agentic, where you want the AI to actually be able to self-diagnose, to treat, or to guide patients in a lot of their decision making, or to actually be a complementary tool to see how they can actually help the doctors in the judgment itself? So I think our objective really is to see how we can create a very good regulatory environment that will give patients the confidence of what the AI tools can do, provide clarity and predictability for the developers who are developing the AI, and also enabling the healthcare professionals to adopt AI in a safe and effective manner. Through what we say, to what we think is a risk-based regulation, a life cycle oversight from the development of the medical of the AI as a software as a medical device, into the product registration if it is a medical device, as well as the post-market oversight. As well as good machine learning practices, as well as close engagement with our stakeholders. I think what we want to do is to aim to ensure that AI continues to improve and enhance healthcare while upholding the highest standards of safety, quality, and public trust. So what we have done is we want to see, how we can do so by coming up with more of a principled approach. So we have came up with a guideline. So what we have is we have a AI in healthcare guidelines, and we have developed that between both Ministry of Health and the Health Sciences Authority, which looks at the regulations of health products. So you can see it covers both regulations of services and regulation of health products. And the principle is looking at it from a safety, effectiveness, transparency, fairness, and accountability angle. So that AI in healthcare guidelines basically provide a practical guidance for the safe development. So if you want to develop a guideline, develop an AI, what do you need to do? After you develop the guidelines, what are some of the things that you need to watch out for if you deploy in the healthcare setting? So we also have guidelines for how you look at safe deployment. And then when you deploy in the healthcare setting, what are some of the governance measures that the healthcare setting needs to put in place? Then after that, I think we have what we call a use of AI in guidelines. So how do you actually use it in a safe and effective manner? If you are the doctor, do you use it? How do you actually use it as a complementary or a tool to help you supplement your judgment itself? Because the other thing we don't want at the moment now, what we are saying is we are positioning as AI actually augments and complements your healthcare delivery. So it's a decision-making tool, but it's also a tool that will augment your clinical decision-making. And you should know what are some of the pitfalls, whether there are any areas that you need to watch out for, whether the data that you put in is representative of what you are looking at or treating, whether there's any biasness, etc. So you actually need to know some of these issues itself. So it clarifies the roles of what the developers, the healthcare organizations, and the healthcare professionals need to watch out for. And it also complements our HSA's regulatory guidelines for software as a medical device, which Guang Yi will talk about it later. So together, all these different frameworks seek to build trust and confidence so that AI itself can be adopted safely, responsibly, and meaningfully in the healthcare setting for patients. So we try to cover the different roles, and we try to cover the different lives across the life cycle approach. But we also use a guideline approach rather than something that is legal itself, so that we don't hamper some of the growth of AI itself. So maybe at this point, I will hand over to Nazia to actually go through some of the principles in terms of the AI in healthcare guidelines and what we are looking out for in the governance approach. And then Guang Yi will then mention from a product perspective, especially if the AI is deployed in the healthcare setting as a medical device. And then after that, we are welcome to take questions and answers towards the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shiva. Yeah, over to Nazia.
Hi everyone. Jay gave us all an introduction earlier. I'm Nazia from the Regulatory Policy Division from the Ministry of Health. And currently, I look after a team that looks at regulations and governance in the emerging space, including in AI in healthcare and separately precision medicine. And in my previous life, I used to be in the National AI Group and Digital Economy Office, focusing on tech and AI related economic policy. So for today, we have the opportunity to share with you on how Singapore is approaching AI governance in healthcare. Raymond gave a very good overview earlier. I will cover the first part, which is to share briefly on the evolving healthcare landscape before going into Singapore's approach to AI governance, including the AI in healthcare guidelines, which Raymond mentioned, and some of you may be familiar with. And after that, I'll hand over to my colleague Kwang Yi from the Health Sciences Authority, who will deep dive into the specific initiatives that support this, such as the regulation of AI medical devices. Let's dive right into it. But before we go into AI governance or even talk about Singapore's approach, it's important to take a step back to look at healthcare landscape itself and what we're dealing with. And the fact is that the healthcare landscape is evolving rapidly, creating both opportunities and challenges for us, I would say. And let me highlight a few major shifts that we're seeing. The first pillar is on healthcare digitalization, which is not just about tech adoption. It is fundamentally about, reimagining healthcare delivery through AI, telemedicine and integrated care platforms, and regulations that will then need to keep pace with innovation. The next one is on precision medicine, which is really moving from a one-size-fits-all approach to individualized medicine that target treatments based on genetic profiles, lifestyle, and environmental factors. Medical devices are becoming increasingly personalized. You have 3D printed implants that are tailored to an individual's anatomy. You have custom prosthetics, among others. And this is really a shift from treating diseases to treating patients as unique individuals. Singapore also has an aging population, the third pillar, and by 2030, 1 in 4 Singaporeans will be 65 years old or older, and this then requires a shift from reactive acute care to proactive and preventative, and even community care-based models where you can bring care close to the patients in their communities and familiar settings. And lastly, we have emerging health threats as climate change and globalization are creating new pathways for disease emergence and spread. These shifts do create new complexities and common challenges for regulatory bodies around the world, including our region. Regulators need to increasingly find the right balance between safeguarding patient safety and public health, with enabling innovation and facilitating access to innovative health products and solutions. And this then means that we need to continuously monitor, identify emerging trends or threats, and also learn from one another to close the gap in knowledge and capacity to be able to deal with rapid innovations and these new care models. And the last pillar we have is emerging technologies are increasingly sophisticated, requiring regulatory frameworks to evolve in order to adequately assess these new health products and solutions and services. The challenges that I've outlined, it creates an imperative for innovation, and medical science and advanced technologies like AI are becoming essential for sustainable healthcare delivery. The regulatory landscape continues to evolve as technology advances, and we must work together to translate these principles into practice and make sure that accountability is clear. And I'll share more on Singapore's position on this later in the presentation. But specifically for the key stakeholders in the ecosystem that we're looking at, for developers, it's very important that they know the markets, they build safely, and have compliance in their AI solutions from day one to facilitate market access. For deployers, it's important to align internal AI governance with regulations and our AI in healthcare guidelines, or we call it Agile. Robust oversight is critical for this, and of course our healthcare professionals, their role is key to care delivery, and the healthcare professional and patient relationship must be preserved, and clinical input then shapes patient-centered regulations. And this brings me, in summary, that we are constantly balancing the three imperatives that you see on screen: patient safety, regulatory efficiency, and innovation. And the fact is that it's not always easy, and it requires continuous dialogue and consultation. We need to adapt practices. One size does not fit all. And we also then need to be prepared to put in place appropriate safeguards, even if it may not always be a popular outcome at that time. Yeah. And in terms of AI applications, the way we look at it, we broadly categorize them according to the level of AI's involvement in the healthcare setting. We have clinical AI, which directly supports clinical decisions and judgment, and has direct impact on patient care outcomes. These include AI used to support healthcare professionals in diagnosis, monitoring, treatment, or condition management. An example I can share that we have is what we call the Selena Plus tool, which detects serious eye conditions at scale, and supports clinicians in identifying high-risk patients earlier. The second pillar that you see is what we call clinical ops AI, that is used, in part of a clinical workflow, but doesn't directly support clinical decisions. So they include using AI for appointment scheduling or clinical notes documentation. An example is our Note Buddy tool that summarizes clinical notes in real time during clinician-patient conversation. So that's our second pillar. And the third and fourth pillar would be Ops AI as well as admin. So Ops AI refers to AI that is part of an operational process in a healthcare setting. It's sector agnostic, such as tools for scheduling or inventory management. And admin AI is really for, AI used for administrative management functions like HR purposes. In summary, this categorization matters for governance. Clinical AI does face greater scrutinization due to its more direct involvement and impact on patient outcomes. Understanding where your AI solutions really sit will help you anticipate regulatory requirements and also set appropriate governance measures as needed. I come to Singapore's approach to AI governance in healthcare on the slide. And Singapore takes a holistic approach to this. For us, responsible AI is both about going upstream and downstream. Upstream in the sense that, to the data sources used in AI development, and downstream in terms of, who is implementing it, how are they implementing it, who are the users of AI. And the way we look at it, AI is governed for us across four pillars. When AI is deployed in healthcare services, our Healthcare Services Act and other various professional acts work in tandem to license healthcare services and set out professional codes of conduct for healthcare professionals. And we expect that these professionals maintain professional standards regardless of AI tools that are used, be it AI or not. And of course, there are data protection and cybersecurity requirements that are applicable to AI solutions. Our national guidelines and and regulations do apply. And for products, AI medical devices or AIMDs are regulated as part of an existing medical device registration process under the Health Products Act. And this ensures that AIMDs meet appropriate standards of safety, quality, and performance before they can be marketed and used in Singapore's healthcare system. And my colleague Kwang Yi will share more on this later. And what we have realized is that this holistic approach can be quite unique to Singapore, as we've realized that others tend to generally focus more on the products aspect of it. And lastly, on the left-hand side, as an enabler, at the ministry level, we do have what we call an AI steering committee that comprises our healthcare ecosystem partners. Here, we centrally identify and support scaling of high-impact public healthcare AI projects. And the committee also provides guidance on AI governance, which is critical to sustainable AI adoption. And to support our approach, we have national and sector-specific guidelines to put in place safeguards for the safe development and deployment of AI. Singapore's Ministry of Digital Development and Information, as well as the Infocom Media Development Authority. So if you see, they provide sector-agnostic guidance on AI use. This includes what you see at the bottom two on the left-hand side. The Model AI Governance Framework for AI, released in 2020, and also guidelines specifically for generative AI, released in 2024. And building on these national frameworks, at the sectoral level for healthcare, we at the Ministry of Health and also the Health Sciences Authority, we have worked together to provide sector-specific guidance for the healthcare sector. So our AI in healthcare guidelines was first released in 2021, and you might be aware that we recently updated it to address developments in AI, such as Gen AI, to better support innovation while ensuring the safety and quality of patient care. The full guidelines and materials, including infographics as well as the toolkit, can be found online. You can easily search for it. You can scan this QR code, or it can be easily found online as well if you just Google it. In the revised guidelines, MOH makes clear our position that AI should augment and empower and not replace our healthcare professionals in enhancing healthcare delivery. We are more specific on the shared responsibilities of key stakeholders as well, such as the developers, deployers. The deployers includes, hospitals and users, which refers to healthcare professionals. And these are the key stakeholders, if you recall, I mentioned earlier on in my presentation as well, that are important stakeholders in the ecosystem for AI adoption, development, and adoption. Just very briefly, developers, they should be able to design transparent, fit-for-purpose AI solutions. They need to evaluate model performance, safety, and compliance across the product cycle. They also need to monitor post-deployment performance. Deployers, on the other hand, they need to establish robust governance with multidisciplinary expertise comprising clinical, technical, and legal information to inform governance decisions. And they too need to monitor post-deployment performance and maintain incident reporting processes internally. And lastly, healthcare professionals always exercise professional judgment and use AI as a supportive tool and build relevant competencies and AI literacy in your workflow responsibly. There is also updated guidance on AI deployment, such as on assessing and mitigating risks. You will find some good examples of AI governance practice that we have highlighted within the guidelines. One example I'll share quickly is from NUHS, and that I have on the slide, where they have set up a multidisciplinary AI governance. Sorry, 1 second. They have set up an AI governance committee with members with technical and clinical background, legal expertise, and from across different medical specialties. to formulate and implement policies on AI development and deployment, and also to conduct a post-implementation audit of their AI systems. And to support safe deployment, we also released a deployer's toolkit along with the updated guidelines. You'll be able to find this through this QR code here or online as well. Earlier, I spoke about the need to be nimble in adapting our regulatory frameworks so they remain relevant and can keep up with innovation. In doing so, besides updating our guidelines, we are adapting to continually support innovation to balance our strong safety standards and facilitate innovation at scale. MOH and HSA, we have introduced the AI software as a medical device, a regulatory sandbox for public healthcare. Public healthcare entities that are developing AI solutions for use can participate in this sandbox. It allows for AI SAMDs that have been developed within public healthcare to be deployed across multiple public healthcare institutions in a cheaper and faster way. Allowing the public healthcare sector to then collectively benefit from these innovations. And one last point I will make, and I want to conclude with this fundamental principle that for us, the human touch in healthcare is irreplaceable. Even as AI transforms healthcare, one thing is always clear: our healthcare professionals remain as primary decision makers. AI is a tool that supports and empowers their judgment. It is not a replacement for it. And healthcare professionals are responsible for competent, compassionate, and appropriate care. What is key is the need for training on responsible AI use and also understanding its role in clinical practice. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and hand it over to Kwang Yi for the next part of the sharing.
Okay, thank you, Nazia. So good day, everyone. Thank you for having me at this AeHIN webinar. My name is Kwang Yi, and I'm from the Health Sciences Authority Digital Health Branch. So today I will be sharing how Singapore approaches the regulation of AI-enabled medical devices. And I hope some of these insights will be useful for health systems across the region as you navigate your own AI governance journeys. So let's start with HSA's core role, which is to ensure that health products, including medical devices in Singapore, are wisely regulated to meet appropriate standards of safety, quality, and efficacy throughout the entire product life cycle. So we also ensure timely access to good quality and safe health products and support the growth of health and also the biomedical sciences industry. When it comes to our regulatory philosophy, our first principle is that patient safety and quality of care, these are non-negotiable. Any AI system deployed in the healthcare setting must demonstrate that its benefits outweigh its foreseeable risks. That is the foundation on which everything else is built. Our second principle is that we modernize and also enhance our laws, adopting international standards and best practices in a judicial way to ensure that our regulations are fit for purpose with the least regulatory burden possible to our stakeholders. Our third principle is that we stay ahead of the curve. It's paramount that we develop regulatory guidance and tools proactively so that innovators have clarity before they need it, rather than having to wait for regulation to catch up with the technology. So this is particularly important in AI, where the pace of development can outstrip the pace of regulation. And our fourth principle is forging strategic partnerships. So with industry, with international counterparts, and with other government agencies, in order to develop a fit-for-purpose regulatory framework for AI medical devices, it is crucial that we embrace collaboration to better understand the technology, limitations, and consideration for such emerging tech. Next, we would like to talk about something that may not be immediately obvious when you think about a regulatory agency. HSA has an expanded economic role, and this is something that our Minister for Health, Ong Ye Kung, spoke about at the International Medical Device Regulators Forum in March 3 months ago. So the first dimension of this expanded role is adaptive regulation, which means advancing innovation while ensuring safety and quality. We are not just a gatekeeper whose job is to prevent unsafe medical devices from entering the Singapore market. We are an enabler whose job is to create conditions for safe innovation to flourish. The second dimension is our holistic value proposition. In partnership with economic agencies and Ministry of Health, we offer companies a clearer route to market. This end-to-end clarity is intended to reduce uncertainty for our medical device stakeholders. For the third dimension, it is global market access. Because HSA standing as a world-class regulator, our approvals carry weight significantly internationally. When a product is approved by HSA, it opens doors in other markets. Let me now get into the specifics of how we regulate AI in healthcare. So the starting point is that AI systems intended for medical purposes, meaning for diagnosis, treatment, patient monitoring, prediction, detection, these are regulated by HSA as AI medical devices, or AIMDs in short, under the Health Products Act. Our regulatory controls cover the full medical device lifecycle from design development through validation, monitoring, and updates. So this is important because AI systems, they are not static. We organize our regulatory controls into 3 areas. The first is the control on our local manufacturers, importers, and wholesalers. This is to ensure that our local dealers have the appropriate quality management system to carry out the relevant activities such as importation, wholesaling, or manufacturing without compromising on the safety, effectiveness, and quality of the medical devices. The second is the control on the product itself. So we assess the device to ensure that they meet the appropriate levels, standards of safety, quality, and effectiveness. The third is post-market control, which ensures that devices in the market continue to be safe and perform after the devices have been deployed into the market. Next, the HSA Innovation Office is our dedicated unit for engaging with innovators and supporting the development of novel products and technologies. So that includes AI, medical devices. I'll not go into all the details here, but the key point is that we have a dedicated team whose job is to work with companies at the frontier of innovation to help them navigate the regulatory pathway to provide early engagement and guidance. So as part of our continual efforts to proactively develop innovative tools to facilitate the regulatory journey of our international stakeholders, we have taken note of a common piece of feedback. That is, it is difficult to risk classify medical devices. As such, we developed and implemented an AI-enabled medical device risk classification tool to assist our stakeholders. So let me play a video demonstration of this tool.
Introducing the new AI-enabled medical device risk classification tool for beta testing. This intuitive platform helps you quickly determine an estimated risk classification for your medical device in just a few simple steps. Currently, it is only available for general medical devices, and we are looking into supporting classification of in vitro diagnostic medical devices in the next phase. Let's walk you through how to use this tool effectively. Step 1. Enter the device name. First, locate the device name field. Here, you'll want to enter the specific name of your medical device. Step 2. Describe the intended use. Move to the intended use section. This is where detail really matters. Provide a comprehensive description and include key details like whether the device is invasive or non-invasive, the duration of contact with the patient, the specific medical condition it addresses, etc. The algorithm uses this detailed information to assess and estimate a risk classification. Step 3. Get your classification. Once you've provided thorough descriptions in both fields, simply click the check button. The tool will analyze your input and provide an estimated risk classification. Additionally, you may notice that similar or comparable devices appear in the related registered devices section below, giving you helpful context and examples of how similar medical devices have been classified. Remember, the quality of your results depends entirely on the quality of your input. Take the time to be descriptive and specific. It's the key to getting the most accurate risk classification for your medical device. Now let's look at what happens when the tool encounters insufficient information to provide a reliable classification. If you enter a device name or intended use description that's too vague or lacks sufficient detail, the system's confidence score may fall below the required threshold for accurate classification. In this case, the tool will display a message indicating that it's unable to classify your device with confidence. First, it will suggest enhancing your device name and intended use descriptions by adding more specific technical details. Alternatively, you may click on the hyperlink to lead you to HSA's existing rule-based self-help classification tool. As you would have witnessed, this medical device risk classification tool is extremely simple to use. Just 2 input fields and 1 click to get your results. Please note that this tool is currently in its beta testing phase, which means we're continuously working to improve its accuracy and functionality. We greatly value your experience and insights. If you have any feedback about the tool's performance, suggestions for improvement, or encounter any issues during your classification process, we warmly welcome your input. Thank you. Introducing the new AI introduce.
Okay, now let me walk you through our risk-based evaluation pathways for medical device registration. We adopt a regulatory reliance approach when evaluating the medical devices coming in for registration. So we recognize the approvals from our reference agencies, namely the European Union, Health Canada, Japan's MHLW, US FDA, and also Australia TGA. So for example, medical devices that have already received US FDA approval, the pathway to Singapore registration is streamlined. And in total, we have 4 main pathways, namely the full evaluation, a bridge evaluation, expedited evaluation, and immediate evaluation. The qualifying criteria, submission requirements, and turnaround times, they are all indicated in the table here. One of the unique challenges of regulating AI as a medical device is that the AI systems change. They are updated, retrained, and also improve on a continual basis. To address this, we launched the Change Management Program for Software as a Medical Device in December 2024. The program allows manufacturers to implement pre-approved, pre-specified changes to their software as a medical device without submitting new regulatory application to us for each individual updates. Regulation is only as good as the science underpinning it. That is why HSA has invested in developing our regulatory science capabilities through the Center for Advancing Regulatory Science Research in Next Generation Therapeutics. It's quite a mouthful, but in short, it's called AscENT. So we established this in partnership with A*STAR, our local agency for science, technology, and research. AeHIN has 3 goals as laid out on the slide. We would like to highlight that one of the center's focus is on digital health, which includes AI. AeHIN is developing the scientific and also methodological foundation that allows us to evaluate emerging AI technologies such as generative AI and agentic AI with more rigor and confidence. Next, I would like to touch on Singapore's distinctive approach, and that is the whole of government support structure we have built around the AI healthcare ecosystem. At HSA, we do not operate in isolation, but rather we play the role of regulator and pulling together the various agencies' functions. Next, let us share some of the accolades, the recognition HSA has received internationally. So in June 2023, HSA was recognized as a World Health Organization stringent regulatory authority for high-risk in vitro diagnostics. And in March 2026, HSA became the first regulator in the world to achieve World Health Organization's highest maturity level for medical device regulation. The practical implication of HSA's international standing is that our regulatory approvals open doors to other markets. We have mutual recognition arrangements and comparable regulator status with a wide range of jurisdictions. We are recognized as comparable regulator by following countries listed on the right. One of the latest developments is the mutual reliance between HSA and Malaysia MDA, Medical Device Authority. What this means for companies is that HSA's approval does not just provide access to Singapore market. It is a strategic asset that can accelerate your regulatory pathway in multiple markets. To close, the key message is that HSA's expanded economic role is not separate from patient safety. It strengthens it by making innovation more predictable, more connected, and more globally relevant. First, HSA implemented an adaptive regulation that allows us to advance AI medical device innovation while maintaining the safety, quality, and evidence standards that patients and clinicians expect. Second, HSA delivers holistic value proposition by joining up the ecosystem. HSA, MOH, economic agencies, clinical partners, and industry working together so companies can see a clearer route from trials to approval, reimbursement, and adoption. Third, global market access builds on HSA's credibility as a trusted regulator, helping Singapore become a launchpad for innovations that can serve regional and global needs. Taken together, these 3 points show how regulation can be a strategic enabler, protecting patients while helping responsible AI medical devices scale from Singapore to the world. So this is my last slide. Thank you for your attention. We would appreciate it if you could scan the QR code on the screen to provide your feedback for this sharing session and also on Singapore's holistic AI governance framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Guan Hee. Maybe we can take a couple of questions, or maybe I can start off the discussion by asking few things, and then we encourage the participants here to also please put in your questions in the chat, and then we could actually have it actually discussed. One of my first questions is the guideline approach is very interesting. I think most countries actually, start with the regulatory side of it, and then probably I think that kind of pulls back, innovation. But then this approach from Singapore is very interesting to have the, guideline approach. And then with respect to AISAMD, like how does the liability or responsibility is apportioned in terms of practice, right? Like you also allow products that means from, if I understand right, those products that has gone through the regulatory regime from other countries, their entry is kind of streamlined. So in this kind of the context, how do you actually apportion or the liability or responsibility in practice, like when an AI SAMD causes the harm? Is it primarily with the developer or the institution that deployed it or the clinician who relied on its output? This is something that I thought like it's kind of interesting, especially in this scenario. Like, how do you?
Thanks, Jai. I think this liability issue is definitely something that everybody is grappling with. Who ultimately is going to be liable, for the use of AI itself in healthcare? And one of the things that I think it was already mentioned, we actually feel that AI is still a complementary and a supplementary tool in healthcare. So it is not something that is going to replace clinical judgment at the moment. So it is always a supplementary tool to it. So even if we should regulate it as a software as a medical device, it is to look at its accuracy, ensure that it's representative of the data that's being used, as well as its effectiveness as a clinical decision tool. But ultimately, when you have a patient in front of you, you would use the AI to help you make certain decisions, rely on the findings. Let's say, for X-rays, and X-rays, I think radiological itself has quite a few AI that's being deployed. And I think the issue is when the AI is being deployed, the user should know that the AI is being used. It is not a clinical decision tool that will take over your judgment. You should still review the patient holistically, based on his medical history, physical examination, as well as whatever findings that have been derived through the AI to support your judgment, but it should not take over the judgment of the medical diagnosis itself. So let's say, even if the AI should say that, oh, there's a lung nodule, you should actually see by itself, to verify and also to use that as a clinical judgment. But you shouldn't say that just because there's a lung nodule, you treat it as per, you don't even see it, and then you just take the finding wholesale and then treat the patient as per, it's let's say a cancer patient.
Thank you. So you also, I think there was a mention about the clinical oversight also, right? So when like, is it kind of done centrally, or is it like kind of institution that is responsible for the use of such products?
When you say centrally, Jai, what do you mean centrally?
Means at the HSA level or at the institutional level, this clinical oversight, does it happen? Is there a central body that actually kind of gives the oversight for the whole country, or does it happen at the institutional level?
So it depends. I think, when you talk about software as a medical device, if it is a medical device that purports to diagnose or treat, then or inform even the clinical decision making, there's different risk tier of the medical devices itself. So if it is a medical device, I think it has to be approved for use as a medical device first. Then you talk about the product itself. So the product must be approved by HSA, and HSA would then look at the safety, efficacy of the data, and then monitor it. If there's any post-market, safety issues, then it will be tracked by ourselves. So that is a product level control. Then when it is being used or purchased or developed by the healthcare institutions, and then what they need to do is at the healthcare institutional level, there must be certain governance measures from the chief of medical board, that actually looks at which are the AIs that's being deployed. So there must be a central view within the healthcare institution to know, which are the AI that's being developed, that's deployed, how it is being used. There must be proper training that are being put in place for the users itself. There must be certain protocol, what are the incident, if there's any issues with the AI app, there must be certain incident reporting and escalation channels. So there, within the healthcare institution, there must be the central oversight by the chief of medical board, within the institution in terms of which AI is being used, how it is being used, and you must make sure that the people that use are trade competent. Then I think the user, will then have to use it from a ethical point of view in which it helps to supplement its clinical judgment. And if it should detect any issues, with regard to the use of the AI, then it is also the responsibility of the user to then report, to HSA, if there's any adverse events. I don't
Thank
know
you.
whether Nazia and Guang Yi, you want to add on?
Yeah, I can add on a little bit. So when it comes to the liability, essentially the gist of it is it's a shared responsibility amongst all the other stakeholders. So for regulators, we are the one that is making sure the device is meeting certain levels of safety, quality, efficacy, and also making sure that the post-market performance of the medical device is of up to a certain level. And for the healthcare institution, they are the one that is making sure the appropriate clinical governance, these are put in place to make sure that there's the right flow to it, to make sure that when they are doing it, the assessment, the diagnosis, this is done in an appropriate manner, because we all know for AI right now, it's only as good to be complementary for clinical decision support, and it shouldn't replace it. So if physicians, they are using it beyond the intended purpose of the AI medical device, let's say, for example, the physician is not reviewing, not verifying the results, they just there's automation bias essentially, then if something goes wrong, the physician, of course, is also liable with this. But the last thing is the AI developers, they are also liable, because if there is a deterioration in the AI performance after it has been deployed, actually they have the obligation, the responsibility to make sure to monitor the AI performance does not deteriorate. And if there is any issues with that, they need to go and retrain, they need to go and carry out patches, retraining of the models. So yeah, it's a whole shared responsibility in this AI ecosystem.
And just to reiterate that, really from a governance perspective, for us, human oversight is really key. And our policy position is really that healthcare professionals remain as primary decision makers. And AI is a tool that supports and empowers their judgment, but it does not actually replace that.
Thank you, Nasi and Guang Hee. I think I also see one question online. Before maybe we can take the cha, and then before we close the session, we are at the top of the hour. Can we take the online question?
Yes, we have. I think we have 3 questions now.
Okay.
I hope we can extend for a bit. There's a question from Dr. Didit from the Ministry of Health, Lao. Based on your experience, what do you consider to be the single most important priority for ASEAN countries to ensure that AI is not only approved by regulators, but also safely adopted, trusted by healthcare professionals, and continuously monitored in real-world clinical practice?
Maybe I can start with this one. I think one of the most important priorities, and I don't know if this is sometimes overlooked, is actually being ready. Readiness to adopt and scale AI is critical. You can have a very nice nationwide AI deployment strategy, and it offers consistency, it offers reach. But really, for a system like that to work, readiness really, really matters for your healthcare institutions, for your clinicians, and for your patients. And one of the main reasons that why AI has failed to scale is actually due to the difficulty in embedding or even re-engineering certain established workflows in healthcare institutions, for instance. instance, that have been refined over many years. So you really do need to sit down, identify some of these areas, invest in AI literacy for clinicians. That's quite critical. And obviously, review workflows, make sure they're adequate and fit for purpose, put in the right infrastructure, and these are quite important factors and cannot be understated. So I think one of the key priorities that we realize, and sometimes there is a tension between readiness and scaling. It's really important to look at what are the factors you need to invest in, be ready in terms of how we want to scale AI adoption.
I think one other point to add on to Nazia is that I think that you also need close engagement and consultation with your stakeholders. Yeah, because ultimately this technology is moving very fast, and how it is deployed and what's the operational implications would need to be discussed with the users. So you really need to know how it is being deployed before you can actually know how to regulate it.
I believe you also had the public consultation and feedback, which I saw in the HSA's website. Thank you. Cha, maybe another question.
Yes, our next question is from Dr. Osama El Hassan. So, how does Singapore manage the governance of remote photoplethysmography, RPPG, that captures vitals such as heart rate, arrhythmia, and the like as diagnostic tools?
I can take this question. So if the PPG device, we really need to look at the intended use assigned by the developer. So if it's intended to monitor the heart rate of the patients and also to detect arrhythmia. So all this intended use, all this purpose, it falls under the definition, our definition of a medical device. And this definition, it's harmonized across all the international regulatory agencies, US FDA, EU. So it's quite consistent how we classify such devices. On the other hand, if you have a PPG that is just meant for promoting healthy lifestyle, for exercise purpose, just to monitor your heart rate, that's it. If that's the case, if it's just solely for general wellness purpose, then you need to put some disclaimer very clearly that, oh, this is not for medical purposes. You shouldn't rely on this for medical usage. Please consult a medical doctor. With all this equivalent disclaimer in there, then this will not be regulated as a medical device. So this one, we have some guidelines. We publish this telehealth products regulatory guidelines to specifically provide clarity on such classification of devices.
Yes, thank you.
But I think that while we also regulate it as a medical device, depending on its intended use and medical purposes, I think also refer to how we look at it from Agile. So, you shouldn't just look at one part of the product, but I think the governance will also guide you in terms of the responsible AI deployment into the healthcare setting and how the user should be using it. And I think for these aspects, when you're talking about capturing vital signs and all these things, there's also how do you actually ensure the safe collection and safe storage of the data itself. So I think of it, as a life cycle approach, as how we have put in for Agile itself.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond and Sir Guangi. So for the last question, it's from Dr. Endrick C. Have you encountered major issues or are there existing legal cases related to AI use in health? If none, what are the most possible issues we will encounter and what do we need to do to anticipate and avoid it?
I think this one, we have not, touch wood, encountered any major issue as yet, which is good because I think everybody is moving very cautiously on this. But I think one of the things that we need to watch out for, as we have mentioned, is actually what Jai has mentioned in terms of the liability and the over-reliance on the AI itself. I think we have always been trying to position it as a complementary, supplementary, tool to help the clinicians in decision making, and over-reliance on it without understanding what the risks are in terms of the data, would be something that is very dangerous. And that is why, we want everybody to know how it is being governed and how it is being used is very important. If you just rely on it without understanding, rely on the findings and the outcome without understanding what the risks are, what this device, the data that has been used to train this device on, whether it's even representative of your data itself. So let's say, you bought something from US, and it has been only trained in the US Western data, and you bring it into Asia, and you don't know whether that output of what has been seen, can actually be representative of your data. That becomes one of very dangerous, pitfalls that may happen. See, so this is where I think an area that we need to anticipate and avoid. But the other thing is, we are also very concerned that sometimes, as we move forth in this AI journey, the question is, do we need to look at how we train our doctors? One day, we think that as AI become more and more sophisticated, as well as more and more well-trained, it may sooner or later be a much more valuable clinical decision tool that may even be agentic. And when that day comes, then how do you actually, where does the doctor come into play? How do you actually train the clinicians, and whether that you will even lead to cognitive decline of our doctors, because the doctors may just rely on AI itself, and the whole paradigm of how medicine is being trained, how medicine is being used, may also needs to be redefined. So this is where something we need to look at.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond. I think we have a very last question from one of our participants. So it's from Dr. Monggal Gurung from the Ministry of Health, Bhutan. So is artificial intelligence as a medical device subject to clinical trials, ethics committee approvals, and trial registrations, just like traditional drugs and hardware devices?
I think Kwang Yi, you can take this.
If there's a need to generate additional clinical evidence to substantiate the performance, the safety of your AI medical device, then yes, you need to undergo the IRB review, but HSA will not be reviewing it. So once you have the IRB approval and you provide to us, you submit to us a notification that you have gotten the approval, you can go ahead with your clinical trial commencement with it. And what we have make it is quite seamless for the, especially when it comes to clinical trial conducting in Singapore. We're gonna make it in a way that is still, of course, it's still being governed by, we have a Human Biomedical Services Act that governs over it. And these are all things that we have put in place to ensure that even when you are conducting clinical trials for medical devices, AI, they are still safe. And for our patients, that's the central, at the center of what we're trying to make sure here. Yeah.
Thank you. I know it is late, but just one last thing, because this is very important for AeHIN. One of the core areas of focus for AeHIN is capacity building and training for the health workforce. So since we are talking about the guidelines, like, was that the health workforce in Singapore were trained on the guidelines, like on the do's and don'ts, or was the training kind of based on the guideline, or was it different? Is it an ongoing, and how do you do it? I think that is also valuable to learn while we had other questions.
So at the moment now, while we have launched the guideline, I think we are trying to work with our different institutions in terms of trying to see how we can look at the training itself. So it is not yet infused, I would say, into our training curriculum for our doctors, as well as either undergraduate or postgraduate. So it is still on talking to them on what the guidelines is about, but we have not infused into the actual training yet. But this is something that we definitely will be looking at.
Thank you, Professor Chua. This is very
Nazia,
important
you wanted
because
to add on?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that training is just one aspect of it, right? So different clusters or public health institutions, they have like their own AI governance committees. And what they do is they are very well aware of the AI in healthcare guidelines. They are briefed on it, they are aware of it, and they are looking at ways to kind of implement that, be it through their workflows, be it how they're looking at their data, or be it like your question on training, right? So there are different aspects to it. And given we just launched it, the revised version anyway, in a couple of months ago, I would say, as Raymond said, it's still trickling in terms of implementation. But just to say that there are various aspects to it that they're looking at, and training is not just the only area. Yeah.
Thank you, Nazia. This is very, very helpful. I think with that, we would like to close the webinar. Once again, I would like to really thank Dr. Raymond, Nazia, and Wahi to join us. I know it is late in the evening, but it is very nice to hear from the very team that has actually, set the things and then rolling in Singapore and implementing it, because though we keep reading about the updates from the website and the reports. So, but this is just a beginning, and then I think we would also like to hear more from you in the future webinars. I think we can also schedule follow-up series to have exchanges, and then also we can have other countries sharing similar experiences, and then we can have a conversation among the countries. This is something that we can also schedule in future. With that, we would like to actually close this webinar, but with also a group picture before we wrap up. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for
Thank
your
you.
questions. And thank you, Jai, for the invitation.
Thank you for enlightening session. It was very interesting. I think we look forward for more further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good day,
Bye.
everyone.